And then Recorder Stephen Richer has some information about voter registration and some of the forms they have received at the Recorder's office. We will take some questions about that matter right after that, and so you're welcome to ask questions on that. And then after we wrap that up, Ray Valenzuela, who is the elections director for early voting, he has some information to share about early voting, an update on where we stand on that, and discuss signature verification as well. Obviously, we're going through that signature verification process now as the early ballots come in, and we want to make sure people understand how that works, whether they're watching the YouTube feed or you're delivering that in your reporting. So I think most people have been here before, but just a few brief rules. During questions, I'll call on you. Please remain seated. And when Jessie has a microphone, just when she brings it to you, that's so people on the YouTube feed can hear what you're asking. And so it doesn't amplify in the room. It's just so they can hear what you're asking. Please tell us who you are, what organization you're with, and then let us know your question. So we'll do our best to get to everyone's questions. We haven't had any problem with that so far. If you need a Spanish language translation, Selena Olivas is with us again today, and she can come up and either translate the answer to the question that was asked, or she can also meet with you afterward and talk a little bit about what was asked, what was said during the presentations as well, to make sure you get the information you need in Spanish if that's necessary. So I believe that's all I have, and with that, I'll introduce Chairman Bill Gates.
Thanks, Fields. Good to see everyone today. For those of you who are wondering about my tie, we're wearing the purple ties today. It's Domestic Violence Month, and we actually, the Board of Supervisors, we voted on a proclamation, obviously showing our opposition to domestic violence in Maricopa County. Again, as Fields talked about, want to thank all of you for coming to today's press conference. We're now doing these on a weekly basis to make sure that we can get out in front. First of all, give you the latest information, but then also get out in front of disinformation, malinformation that may be going on out there in the community. We're doing great as far as staffing up for the election. I know I get that question about everywhere I go around the community, and this is a great testament to the work that has been done of the team. We're already 84% staffed up at our vote centers and on pace to be fully staffed up by Election Day. And today, in fact, my colleagues and I on the Board of Supervisors approved the list of poll workers who are, again, these are people in our community, our neighbors, friends, family, our grandmas, grandpas, all that. So we're thrilled in particular that we have a bipartisan group again this year, and we're working very hard to make sure that we have bipartisan representation among the poll workers. And speaking of our great poll workers, I wanted to take just a moment to reference what happened or what's happening now and what happened earlier today. We have folks that are approaching our elections workers as they go into the site. They're taking pictures of them. And regardless of what the intent is of these people who are taking pictures of our elections workers, they're harassing people. They're not helping further the interests of democracy. And if these people really want to be involved in the process, learn more about it, come be a poll worker or be a poll observer. But doing these sorts of things, and we saw this during the primary, and it's very unfortunate that we're starting to see it again, it's not helping anyone. Sometimes there's some confusion what the role of the Board of Supervisors is and what the role of Recorder Richer is. Of course, we're a team, we're one team, but we do have specific responsibilities. I think everyone knows voter registration is under the Recorder's area. But for the board, we are responsible for tabulation, the actual tabulation of the votes. And tabulation will begin next week. On Monday. So if you want to find out about where your ballot is in the process, we know a lot of people have already, voted and thrown their ballot in the mailbox or whatever. And if they want to find out where exactly it's at in the process, please sign up for a text alert. I've done it. I think a lot of people we see have done it in the community. It's a great way to be able to chart what's going on. And then the final thing I just want to stress is that the tests and the audits, you hear all this, it's already started with this election. So we have already, with the LNA test, tested the equipment, and it's showing that it's programmed to count the votes accurately. Like I said, we've hired bipartisan staff to run this election. And again, as was established over and over again in 2020, our ballot tabulation equipment is not connected to the internet. It is an air-gapped system. So regardless of who wins or loses, it's very important that people in our community, our observers, the media, our neighbors, our political parties, and our candidates commit now that they're going to respect the results of this election when it is done. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Recorder Richer. And I apologize. Before, I just wanted to note one of my colleagues, Clint Hickman, has just joined us. Clint, yeah. Thanks for being here, Clint. Clint is vice chair of the board and one of my 4 partners. And thank you so much for being here, Clint, and thanks for your leadership.
All right, fantastic. I guess I didn't need this for the very long 5 minutes that I will be up here. Thanks for the purple tie memo. Yeah, I got a disappointed shake of the head from Bram and others, Eddie somewhere there too. So, all right, Stephen Richer, Maricopa County Recorder, talking about voter registration. And I sometimes feel that voter registration is the forgotten component of the entire election ecosystem, but it's a critical component of the election ecosystem because without input, we do not have output. We talk often about, transporting those early ballots, tabulating the results, curing ballots, adjudicating ballots, but we don't talk that much about that first process. And that is so critically important because the notion of being able to inject willy-nilly ballots from all over the country is a readily falsifiable notion because we only assign tabulated votes to registered voters. To have a vote, you must be a registered voter. To be a registered voter, we have to do an identity check. We do that identity check either with the Motor Vehicle Division or with the Social Security Administration. To be able to be an early voter, you have to have a location. We confirm that with our GIS team, and then we send out a voter registration card. If that voter registration card comes back as undeliverable, we can't put you on the voter registration rolls. So when we talk about something like the cast vote record after the election, that's assigned to every single voter registration profile. So if someone were to hypothetically say that they flew in a plane from South Korea and they had 20,000 ballots that they injected into the system. Well, first, we don't just take loose ballots. As we've discussed before, those ballots have to come back in that green envelope, and that green envelope has to be signed, and it has to have a barcode. And what is that barcode linked to? It links to a voter registration profile who has registered, who has shown identity, and who has been confirmed on the back end. So very important component that I think sometimes is left unaddressed. We closed voter registration for the November general election a week and a half ago. You can still register to vote, but if you register to vote at this time, you will not be eligible for the November general election. Ordinarily, the voter registration deadline is 29 days before Election Day. This year, because that fell on Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, it was 28 days before election, which was Tuesday, October 11th. At close of books, we received, as I mentioned last week, approximately 25,000 voter registration forms in the last 2 days of the voter registration deadline. We've now input all of those in, and we are in what's called the closed books period, whereby we have the official voter registration numbers that will be in effect for the November general election. And drum roll, please. Wonderful, thank you. And as you can see from the screen, those are the voter registration numbers. Now, the first thing that jumps out to people, at least on Twitter, which of course is entirely reflective of the population at large, and everyone knows is the bastion of all reason and truth, people immediately talked about independence being the largest, quote, party in Maricopa County. While this hasn't happened in a number of years, this has happened previously. And I looked at 2014. In 2014, before the November general election, was the last time that independents and party not designated was the largest party in Maricopa County. So it's been a good number of years. Prior to the November 2020 general election, Republicans were the largest party by about 75,000 voter registrants. So that reflects a lot of work by our voter registration team. That reflects a lot of effort over the last year and a half to send out mailers, to do everything that we can possible and within the confines of both the National Voter Registration Act and state law to make sure that our voter rolls are as accurate, as is possible. So really this has been a priority. I'm very proud of the voter registration team with all that they have done in this respect. They have also benefited from new partnerships with ERIC, new mailings through ERIC, and additionally through a number of additional mailings because of the redistricting period. So the redistricting period, while it was a nuisance to many and you have to now figure out your new legislative districts and your new congressional districts, it also afforded us the opportunity to send out an additional voter registration card, which means we get to send out 2.5 million pieces of mail that can then trigger the NVRA process whereby we can move you to inactive. And so that was another thing that was very beneficial in helping us stay in terms of very clean voter registration rolls. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is when it gets down to election time and it gets exciting, there's a lot of groups that really want to participate in the electoral process. And they want others to be able to participate in the electoral process. And I truly believe that for the vast majority of people, this stems from a very good place. Unfortunately, there are some people who are sloppy about their practices or don't go about the practices in the best manners. And for that reason, we continue to see, especially in paper forms, a large number of forms that are delivered right before the voter registration deadline that have incomplete information, that have inaccurate information, that are seemingly done on behalf of a voter who did not solicit that update to their voter registration profile. And anyone who does that, if you're part of an organization that does that, you are doing a disservice to your organization, you're doing a disservice to voters, and you're doing a disservice to the Maricopa County voter registration team. We're going through those. We will make sure that we do everything possible to make sure that all eligible voters who were registered in time for this November general election are able to cast a ballot that is tabulated. But at the same time, we don't want to inflate our voter registration totals, and we certainly don't want to interfere with anybody's ability to have their information accurately if it was manipulated by somebody who should not have been manipulating it. So I think that's all that I wanted to say on voter registration forms, and then I think Ray is going to talk about early voting.
Let's see if anybody has any questions. Does
Okay.
anybody have any questions
Who's going
on these matters?
well,
Go ahead, Brett.
who's going to speak to the issue the Secretary of State brought up with the federal-only
I will happily
forms?
speak to that, but would you like me to do it at the end, or would you like me to do it now?
Let's go ahead and take that.
Master of Ceremonies, Fields. All right.
What's the impact and how did it happen?
So about 2 weeks ago, our voter registration team identified an issue with some of the HAVA checks for citizenship status when we were inputting forms. And we were getting return information that didn't seem consistent with our records and was pinging inaccuracies. We notified the Secretary of State's office. We then followed up with the Secretary of State's office. We reached out to the governor's office to get the Motor Vehicle Division, and the Motor Vehicle Division and the Secretary of State's office this weekend identified an issue whereby the HAVA check to elevate somebody to full citizenship status wasn't being performed necessarily as it should be. Secretary of State's office identified potentially 6,000 voter registration forms that it would affect. We then ran a query and we found out that of those 6,000, 3,550 are in Maricopa County. Now we're going through those to see which are hard matches such that it really is a voter who was in the system who should have been elevated to full ballot status but has not, and which are soft matches in which it is a different voter registration profile, in which case it should remain a federal only ballot. Of that 3,550, 651 is the total universe of people who might have been mailed a ballot, who were mailed a ballot that was a federal only ballot, but should have been mailed a full ballot. Now we are still determining the number. That is the maximum limit of the number of people who could have been mailed a federal only ballot inappropriately. We're going through this. Like I said, we received this information from the Secretary of State earlier this week. We will reach out to every single affected voter once we determine that number, and we will do everything that we possibly can to make sure that every voter is able to vote a full ballot if he or she is entitled to do so.
How would a voter know if they might have been affected? Is there a profile of a voter registration that would have been affected by this?
So you could go on, if you were proactive about it, you would have seen in a voter registration card, it would have demarcated you as federal only. Or if you went on to beballotready.vote, you would have seen that it was federal only. But also, when you receive that ballot, you would see that there's only 2 contests on that ballot. Now, we've talked here about how there's 65, 70, 75, 80 plus contests on ballots throughout Maricopa County. For a federal only ballot, you would just have the U.S. Senate race and the appropriate U.S. House race. And so a voter could recognize that, say that's not what I should be receiving, and reach out. Now, we will be, like I said, as soon as we determine what this universe is, reaching out to all of these voters proactively.
I guess what I'm getting at is, would the mismatch have occurred for a particular kind of voter? I thought I heard you say, if I had to update my citizenship status or provide actual proof, would that have mean I would?
No, it wouldn't. It was
just random?
It was randomly. But this was on pulling that HAVA, Help America Vote Act information from the MVD, which is used to confirm citizenship.
And are you saying it was your office that discovered this and then alerted the Secretary of State?
Any other questions?
Thank you. Sasha Hefko of the Arizona Republic. Bram took my first question. Are we going to get a chance to ask questions after Ray speaks? Okay, just wanted to check on that. In that case, with people watching ballot boxes and now with people outside McTech, what's the line in terms of voter intimidation? Like, where does this cross the line between being just people watching, which they are allowed to do, versus actual intimidation, particularly with the outdoor ballot boxes? Does the 75-foot limit apply to them?
So
that's 2 questions in one.
That's something that we're having the county attorney's office look at right now, and I believe the Secretary of State's office is looking at it right now. If you encounter that, if you're a voter who feels that you are intimidated, yet you are deterred from participating in the process, we ask that you report that. It's something that we will investigate every single alleged occurrence, but we have not come up with the legal framework by which we are evaluating that yet.
So in that case, is it clear when like law enforcement or some other type of official would respond to a complaint?
I'm not prepared to answer that right now. I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyone else?
Chairman Gates, do you have anything else to add to that? Okay.
Thank you.
Since we're on that subject, Chairman Gates, can you share where this has happened and how often poll workers have been confronted?
Well,
for voters?
yeah, so in the context of the general election, it's my understanding today was the first day that this has happened, and it's down at McTech. And it did happen previously during the primary election. It happened as the votes were being counted. And it's important that everyone understand, because we greatly appreciate our elections workers, that we are working closely with law enforcement. We have the sheriff's, deputies out there. We're getting people in and out in a safe fashion. But we saw this before during the primary. We had buildings that were they had access to, these folks, and they were standing on the roof taking pictures of people. So again, this is the sort of thing that's going on. This is the sort of thing that's been normalized, and it has to stop. That's why we're encouraging these people who are passionate about the election to get involved. They don't have to stand outside, take pictures, harassing people. We want them to come inside, volunteer, maybe with the party, as a poll observer, or as a worker on election day. But this sort of activity, at Maricopa County, we're saying that it's done. We're going to protect our elections workers, and we're going to continue to shine a light on this. And so when we have to take certain actions to protect our elections workers, if there are campaigns that accuse the county of not being transparent, I'm going to push back on it. They did it during the primary, and if they do it again, I'm going to push back on it. We're running the most transparent election in Maricopa County's history, and we're also protecting our elections workers. We can do both, and if the campaigns have issues, they can contact us. They have our phone numbers. They don't need to go out and send incendiary tweets. Thank you.
One more question, since you did mention the bipartisan poll workers. I think you know how people look over this with a fine-tooth comb. How bipartisan is this group of poll workers by party?
Yeah, and I think that I'll call Scott Jarrett up, maybe can give us some more specifics on it. But, you know, it's interesting you asked that because I saw Helen Purcell recently, and I said, Helen, have you heard about what's going on? Absolutely. And her comment was, you guys are doing a lot better job of recruiting Republicans than back in my day. You know, as a Republican, I've been a Republican since I was in high school. For whatever reason, we've had a little bit more difficult time recruiting Republicans to come. But as Scott will reference, we are working closely with the County Republican Party, and you'll see that the numbers are very strong. But again, this is it's a tough time to get people to work. Everyone knows about labor challenges that we have out there right now. But again, I'll just take one moment. This lawsuit that was filed by the RNC and the Arizona Republican Party is no basis in fact and was a political stunt. And the reality is that the Maricopa County Republican Party is working very closely with us, and I'll let Scott Jarrett talk about that now.
Thank you, Chairman. And to answer Sasha's question from last week about what that bipartisan breakdown is, well, first, we have great relationships with all the county chairs in ensuring that we have bipartisan representation in our voting locations, as well as working at McTech. And that's no different from every election in the past. But for this specific election, as the chairman said in his opening comments, we're 84.1% staffed at our vote centers. And currently we have a breakdown of 792 Democrats and 839 Republicans, 4 Libertarians, and 338 registered as party not declared or independents or another party. At McTech, so for the positions that actually handle the ballots, so those would be like our ballot couriers that go out and retrieve ballots during early voting, for those bipartisan processing boards that are separating the ballot from the affidavit envelope, or for someone performing signature verification or working in our tabulation center as part of adjudication. That breakdown currently is 125 Democrats, 134 Republicans, and 542 as party not declared or independents. The total hiring from our temporary workforce currently right now is 973 Democrats, 988 Republicans, 6 Libertarians, and 430 party not declared or independents.
So we're going to move on to our next section. If you guys have more questions as we move along, we'll take some more questions at the end of this. But I want to make sure Ray Valenzuela has a chance to come up and talk about everything that's been going on. Obviously, early voting is going on right now, and then tabulation starts next week. But signature verification, a very important aspect of this, one of the many checks and balances that's out there. Not to steal your line there, Ray. But please, Ray Valenzuela.
Thank you all. And I will not be taking any questions after. No, but just to echo off of what's happening as far as early voting is in process, and a lot of you are aware the recorder provided some of the registration numbers that are closed books. We also have for early voting some closed book numbers with regards to ABLE, active early voting list. So I'll give you that number, then I'll give you some of our returns as far as where we sit as of today. So for the voter registration totals, to add a little bit of meat to the bones, if you will, the active early voting list, we have 664,141. I apologize it's not up here, but that's how many Republicans we have. But let me start with, there's 78.3% of the total registered voters, of those 2.4 million, that are on the active early voting list. So just so you know, that's the breadth of what we're mailing out. And again, 684,141 Republican, 640,302 Democrat, 14,000 approximately Libertarian, and 595,633 independent or PND. And I mention that because it is a large volume of voters, and the percentages is probably the better way. Of Republican, of the 78.3%, 27.3 are Republican that are on the active early voting list, 26.3 are Democrat, and 24.5% are independents. So there are although independents make up the most registration, actually Republicans make up the most voters on the active early voting list by an amount of 27.3 versus 26.3 for Dems, 24.3 for the independents. I just want to give you that number. With that being said, we have mailed out 1,928,806 810 requests that we received and ballots. That is as of everything on this, what I'm repeating here is at 10 a.m. Everything is fluid. Just 10 seconds ago, we had 2 more people request. So this number is as of 10 a.m., 1.9 million. Of that, 6,433 were military and overseas voters. We also had today, as of 10 a.m., 1,402 voters vote in person at our 12 in-person sites that are open. Again, that continues to grow. We are a little bit, and I think we may have mentioned it, a little bit off pace from the like-kind election. The 2018 election gubernatorial, we had, at this point, E-minus 21 or 21 days prior, we were at 92,000 ballots returned. So that's where we would like to be, but as of today, at the same time, we were at 55,543 returns as far as ballots, and we have signature verified 50,596. So we pretty much have checked those already, have those ready to be sent to processing, but it is a little bit behind the 2018 numbers, and we're hoping to pick that up and pick that pace up. So with that said, in those numbers, what I'd like to do is remind folks to, if they got their ballot, most folks should have them by the end of today. When we mail last Wednesday, usually 2 to 6 days. If you have it, if you want to be part of the 8 p.m. results that are released on election night, then we ask that you return that as soon as possible. And the last day for it to be part of that results is November 5th. So Saturday, November 5th, any packets we have in-house, we will be able to process and have part of that 8 p.m. election night results. So again, we always constantly push to, you have your ballot voted, get it back to us so we can get these numbers and have less late return results, if you will. If you have your ballot and you want to drop it off, again, or you want to vote in person early, you don't have a ballot, visit locations.maricopa.vote. I want to keep replugging that as many times as possible. That locations.maricopa.vote will tell you the locations of where you can drop these ballots off if you prefer that rather than mailing, or to just get a replacement or vote early in person. Now, specifics with regards to, because we're in the middle of early voting and the recorder and the chairman mentioned checks and balances, stealing my own term, but we have a lot of safety and security measures in place, and I want to, for the voters' purposes, a couple of questions that we usually hear, and I want to answer quickly today. Number one, the safety, one of the security measures, there's many throughout the election process, but one of them for early voting is 100% of all early ballots returned are signature verified, 100%, and they're done by human trained staff. We have multi-tiered system, and what that means is that a signature coming back goes through potentially 3 different reviews, 3 different individuals. So there's an entry level, there's a manager level, and there's an audit review. A lot of folks don't realize, and they say, well, how can you do that? I say that myself, how do we do that? But we do it well, and we just have the resources for it. So it does go through a multi-level check. Every single staff member goes through a signature verification training, temp or otherwise. If they're permanent, they actually go through an accreditation through affiliated forensic laboratories, the same group that trains FBI and assists in those cases train our permanent staff. So again, signature verification is paramount. It is 100% on every return ballot, and only those that are verified and valid are sent to count. So I wanted to add that information for the voters out there, but then it lends itself to saying, well, how do I know you have the right signature for me? How do I know I haven't updated? So the first and foremost, we've been doing this for a while. If you're a regular mail ballot voter and we haven't contacted you in the recent years, then we have an exemplar on file that you don't need to worry. Now, the reason being is, well, what do you have? The first time you registered when you're, as the chairman said, in high school, and we have that signature with a heart over the I, if that's the case. But as you matured or whatever it may be, as you matured and your signature matured, or you moved, anytime you move, we have every single registration signature and form on file. So we have that exemplar. But that's not enough. We have also, every time you voted in person, you signed a signature roster, we have that. We have that signature roster image to look at. So you may not be a mail ballot voter and you voted for history in person, and this is the one time, well, we have those reference signatures. You also have voted in early several years. We have vetted early voting packets that we maintain those images. So all of those are exemplars. So again, if we haven't contacted you, then likely is we have a good signature. What happens if we don't? Your first-time registered voter, we only have one signature, and it doesn't match this signature we have. Then we do, and is required by law, we do a signature verification. We reach out to every single voter. and we contact them by letter. We contact them by phone. So by phone, and I want to point out, if you got your green affidavit, it has a line for a phone number. I want people to realize that we will not add that to your registration record. A lot of people don't want to get a call in the middle of dinner saying, whatever it may be, vote for me. So we won't add it to your permanent record. We only use that if we need it for question signature. So I want to encourage people, add that phone number just in case. So we will send you a letter. We'll call you by phone. We'll email or text you. Example that, and the chairman mentioned again, we keep plugging the text the word join to 628-683. That is your ballot status automatic notification. Not only does it tell you a ballot's been mailed, that we received it, and that when it's signature verified and counted, it also tells you when we have a questionable signature instantly that says we have a questionable signature, call us. And we cannot verify you over the phone. We have your registration form. We have your mother's maiden name. We have all these things that we can vet you and then say, we're going to go ahead and stamp this, verified and approved. So again, text join 628-683. I'd love to get 1.9 able voters. I'd love to get 1.9 ballot status subscription service signups. So if we can get that, this will help us, especially if you have a questionable signature. The only other thing to note is we do have a new process. It's called text to cure. It is on our website, but what it is just another option, voter-centric option, where a voter, if they have a questionable signature, through those sources, letter, email, even Ballot ready to vote, if you have a question signature on your status, it will pop up and say, hey, in case you were coming here to see what address we have, by the way, we have a question signature, and you can use this text to cure. All that is a link where it's a secure portal where you upload a copy of your photo identification that you would normally provide at the polls, state ID, state driver's license, and you confirm and sign that you attest this is you, then we will be able to use that to vet and verify your question signature. So again, there are many processes that we use as far as that help us keep this safe and secure, but also maintain the voter-centric nature of this process. Last is we do have some deadlines. And specific to the non-matching signatures, Arizona law requires, and this was just recent as of 2018. When I say recent, a lot of folks look at data and say, well, why do we have so many non-matching or bad signatures at the end of the canvass 2016, 24? Because we couldn't cure. 2018, a law change that allowed you, and it gives you 5 business days to contact us to cure, because it's a subjective thing. We have one signature. I'm trying to say, well, this is the only thing I can match. You get those 5 business days. What I want to point out today is that because there is a holiday on Friday, Veterans Day, the 11th, after the election, they have extended, the state law extends it to Wednesday, November 16th. So Wednesday, November 16th by 5 p.m., anybody that's contacted by us, you will be notified that you have until that time to verify your identity and confirm that this is your ballot. Yes, you do recall casting it. The other thing, there is another process by which an individual may be deficient as far as not signing their packet. That's a rare circumstance, but when we have those no signatures, that voter's deadline is different. They only have until 7 p.m. to cure that, because it's like standing in the line of waiting. You only, if you're not there by 7:01, you can't. So this is not a subjective question to your signature. It's a no signature, so you have 7 p.m. But we do provide letter, phone, email, let you know, and we give you 2 options. Come in, we have your packet sealed, you can sign it, or go into a vote in person and get a replacement ballot. It'll void that out, and automatically you're good to go. So again, 2 deadlines, no signatures, November 16th, 6 business days because of the holiday, questionable signatures, and no signatures, 7 p.m. on election night. So that covers the election part, and I'll turn it back to Fields for questions.
Thank you very much, Ray. Do we have any questions? That was a very detailed explanation of all that.
Yeah. Just to help prepare people for the vote count, so it never occurred to me Veterans Day is just a few days after the election. Does that mean you won't be working on Veterans Day on the count? Oh no, Stephen's going to be keep on working. Oh yeah. So you'll keep counting on Veterans Day.
Holidays don't exist in the election world, so yes, we will be.
Do you have any other follow-up on that? But Scott is correct. I think you guys will be counting through the weekend. Is that fair? Go, please.
That's correct. We'll be counting until we post our final results. Currently, we're planning to get anywhere from 98 to 99% of our results released on November 11th, Veterans Day, and then probably anywhere, it'll take us 10 to 12 days to get those final results posted. And I think next week we'll be going into more detail about our tabulation process, our results posting, and then post-election recounts.
My name is Vivian Mans. I'm the U.S. correspondent for Swiss TV. My question goes to Mr. Richer and Mr. Gates. I was here a year ago because of the recount. We were talking then. Since then, you've been explaining to the people the elections were fair, there was no fraud, and these elections are going to be safe. But still, there are many people who think there was fraud and they doubt that it's going to be safe. Some of them are running for office. They might be elected. What if in 2 years you count the votes, you say that that's a correct vote, and there's people saying, no, we don't believe that, and they will want to overthrow it. So people in Switzerland are concerned about that, about democracy. What if in 2 years you count and there's somebody saying, no, we don't believe it, we want to overthrow it?
Well, Vivian, you're talking about in 2024?
Yes.
When we get there? Chairman Gates.
Well, welcome back to Maricopa County, by the way. We know a lot of folks from around the world have visited. They're visiting now. They are concerned about this, and we thank all of you for coming. But I think the reason that you're coming and asking us these questions is because America has this long tradition being the world's oldest democracy. We've had a tradition of a peaceful transition of power. And tragically, that came to an end on January 6, 2021. We can't say that anymore. And so I was speaking at an event last night, and I was kind of telling people this message is the rest of the world is watching us. It's not just about us. It's about the rest of the world, the other democracies. And so that's my message to the candidates who are running this year. We have answered all the questions over and over again, and there may be more questions between now and that final count, and that's okay. We'll stand up here, we'll answer all those questions. But what I would ask of the candidates and the political parties is that when we answer those questions effectively, that they acknowledge that they say, you know what, we raised these questions, but Maricopa County addressed them. And not just Maricopa County, but outside experts over and over again. So this is something that we control, and specifically our candidates control this, okay? If they have questions right now about the process, they should be asking us those questions. But as I talked about earlier, we've already gone through the process. We've checked the machines. The machines are counting accurately. Moving forward to 2024, as you know, we'll have a presidential election. So it's even more important with nationwide importance that people on all sides, because it's not just been Republicans. Since 2000, we've had Democrats as well who have questioned election results. So everybody's got to say, you know what? This is about this democracy continuing forward. We're all on the same team here. Our democracy is on the line. So if we can do that and work together and make these election systems even better, we'll be in good shape. But if there are some people who refuse to accept these results, then I would say their fellow party members, their fellow Arizonans need to stand up and say, this election's over. You've had your chance. You've challenged things. There have been the audits. Recognize it. We have to be self-governing. That's what democracy and a democratic republic about, is being self-governing. And right now, we're not doing a very good job of it. So thank you for the reminder of the impact and importance of what all of our elections workers are doing.
Are you worried?
I wouldn't use the word worried. I'm very focused on this. I understand the importance of this issue. That's why we're all here. Have we ever done press conferences weeks in advance of the election? No, we're doing it because all of us are focused on it. But worried is not the word. Worried means we're not doing what we need to do, and we're absolutely doing what we need to do. But I'm concerned about bad behavior. I'm concerned about people not acknowledging basic principles of morality and truth. That's what's broken down. It's not the Constitution. It's literally the trust that undergirds our system that is cracking because people think it's in their best interest. Congressmen, governors, former presidents. That's what's wrong, not what we're doing. I'm not worried about this team.
This is really scary, but when I hear you, but.
And he is correct. We haven't done press conferences like this in the past. But I think as many of you know, if you were here in 2020 and you've read the stories or you've written the stories about this, we've been accused of not being so transparent, which is there's a lot of information out there you could read on the website. The team at Elections has done many things, just the facts. We have FAQs. We also have Mythbusters. We have any number of products out there to answer people's most commonly asked questions. This is one more level, one more tactic we can use to try to communicate directly to members of the media, but also to the public as well, if they're willing to listen. Does anybody else have a question?
One more question here. Steve Nielsen, Fox 10. Want to talk about a specific issue and kind of big picture it. I had a couple reach out to us that said they got duplicate ballots in the mail. We checked their record. It looks like the county has them as requesting new ballots. They say they didn't, but regardless of that, if you get new ballot or double ballots in the mail, what should you do in a situation like that? And also, it doesn't matter how many ballots you get, you only get one vote, right?
Quarter ready.
No, so yes, to answer the last question, yes. So again, going back to that voter registration profile, you have one voter registration profile, you can only assign it one vote for that. So it's, if you look at the cast vote record, it's a binary, it's a 1 or a 0 for each of the contests. The system is designed such that we can send out additional packets, and that's for obvious reasons, that you might tear your ballot, you might spill coffee on it. This team has seen a lot of things spilled on ballots, and so that will prompt additional ballot requests. That green return affidavit envelope has a barcode. As soon as we activate a new packet for you, that first packet becomes dead. It becomes deactivated. So if you sent it back, if you sent both back, we would scan both. One would be able to move forward. Its life would be over, and it would be there in that box, and so it wouldn't go any further. Now, regarding which one you should use the second arriving one. So the barcode at the end will be 02 instead of 01, and so that's the one that you should return it in. If you have any questions about this, we're still doing a great job with answering phones in under a minute to our hotline right now, and we're still turning emails within 30 minutes. We received 1,000 emails over the last 2 days, and we've been turning those within 30 minutes. So really, for incidents like that, I'm glad that they reached out to you guys, and hopefully you were able to direct them to us. But we appreciate when voters reach out to us, because that is an easy way to correct this and to make you feel better about the process. Is that good? Okay.
Can I check a number real quick? You said 654, going back to the question of the federal ballots, 651. 651
is the maximum number of mail ballots that might have been sent out to people who should have received a full ballot but received a federal-only ballot. So that is the maximum number. Now, we are not saying that it is 651, but we are saying that it will be 651 or fewer than 651. And we will have that most likely by tomorrow.
Taylor Tassler, KTAR News. This is a question for the recorder. Can you elaborate a little bit on a topic you mentioned earlier about people manipulating voter registration? Can you give some specific examples of what's being done and just kind of elaborate on this a little bit more?
Anyone can register to vote. Anyone can register anyone else to vote. You can grab a paper registration form. Now, there are checks. If you are an existing voter registration, we have your social security number, we have your signature on file, but you can fill out a form, and we have unfortunately seen this, fill out a form that has a name, has an address, birth date doesn't match, social security doesn't match, signature doesn't look the same. We'll contact that voter. No, that wasn't me. And so we fear that in these instances, some people are being incentivized by perhaps pay per form and are submitting things that just junk up the system, that won't be passed through the system, because we are vigilant. And like I said, this is the front door to the House of Elections. And we don't want that happening. But unfortunately, some people, and we always see this at a higher level right before every election voter registration deadline cutoff.
Is it higher this year than years in the past? Can you give me a specific of how often you're seeing this time around?
It does seem to be particularly pronounced. We are seeing several thousands of forms like these.
Can I answer your question, Taylor? Okay. Is anybody else? Sasha, you got anything else? I thought you had one in reserve here.
Yeah, just a clarification on Bram's clarification. So there were two numbers, the 651, and then there was also a 3,550 number, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
I'm sorry.
no, this was all just presented to us. We noticed this, we flagged it, we're glad that it's being addressed. Obviously, in an ideal world, we would have had this information and it would have run the HAVA check such that we would have never been in this space. The Secretary of State put out the number 6,000. Of that approximation, 3,550 belong to Maricopa County. Now, we do not know yet what part of that universe it actually affects. But of those, only 651 are people who would have received a mail ballot. If you're part of that 3,550 universe, and we've identified it, we found out that you should have been HAVA confirmed, you should have been upgraded to full ballot, and you haven't shown up to a voting location, then you might not know the difference because it will be remedied by the time that you get there. Does that make more sense? Okay.
Any other questions today? I'm seeing mostly county staff in the crowd, so thank you, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you for traveling all the way here, Vivian and your team. So we will send you out an advisory next time we're going to do this, sometime next week, and let you guys know when the next press conference is. But thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.